Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show. And with me right now, I've got a very special guest. He is a pro wrestling author, historian, and journalist, and has written the brand new book, A Decided Novelty, The Essential Guide to Black Pro Wrestling History, 1880 to 1950. Pleased to welcome Ian Douglas. Welcome to Wrestling with Heart.
Stanley, thank you for having me. Don't mislead the people. You told them you had a special guest. I'm afraid it's just me this time.
Hey, we're always welcome to bring on anybody and everybody that wants to do the show. And you've got a really cool book out. I want to jump into that in just a few minutes. But you grew up in Southfield, Michigan. Talk to me about your childhood and upbringing.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for mentioning Southfield specifically. Most people would just say Detroit, which is fine. When I was born, my family lived in Detroit in the Rosedale Park area. We moved to Southfield when I was 3 or 4 years old, just to the north and west of Detroit's northwest corner, so 9 Mile and Beach Road. Um, and as far as pro wrestling fandom, I think I saw we had pro wrestling going on sort of in the background. No one in my house watched it, but occasionally I'd be flipping through on the rare occasions when I had control of the TV. I'd see Roddy Piper doing something with Hulk Hogan, or I'd see something being advertised, or I'd see Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling cartoon. So I had this rough idea that things were going on, but one day I clicked on wrestling. I saw Randy Savage flattening somebody with a flying elbow off the top rope. And that made me an instant wrestling fan, and especially a fan of Macho Man Randy Savage. So I know I'm dating myself with all of this, but like 1986 Randy Savage, to me, is still pretty much the best thing that ever happened to pro wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, Macho Man was this, huge icon, right? Hulk Hogan, people still to this day talk about how impactful Hulk Hogan was. May he rest in peace. But Macho Man was another huge figure of that time as well, with the colorful costumes and the outfits. Another guy that really was huge in pop culture with the Slim Jims and all that stuff. What was it about Macho Man that just made you go, man, this is so cool?
The athleticism, the vibrance, the color, the constant movement, the kinetic energy, the dynamism. He was, and in addition to that, well, first of all, you couldn't take your eyes off the guy. Right? No matter what he was doing, uh, even if he wasn't actively wrestling, the way he was engaging with the audience, staring out into the crowd, playing off of Miss Elizabeth or whatever she was doing, he was just a fantastic all-purpose entertainer. I'm I'm sure people have matched him for that. I don't know that it's possible to surpass what he was in that period from 86 to 89. And in addition, I think this is an underrated element of at least why I was a fan of him. And it's the fact that he's listed in some places as 6'1", 6'2". He was not. Compared to a lot of the guys he was facing, he was undersized, certainly in comparison to Hogan. Like I've met Hogan face to face. Even in his later years, he was just a giant of a man. Savage was much smaller. Back then, I was always drawn to the underdogs, and I don't care if Savage was a heel or not. If in my mind, This guy's listed as 6'8", 300 plus pounds. If you have to rake his eyes or choke him or use the ropes for leverage to keep him down, fine. That's what I would do if I was facing somebody that big. I want you to use everything you can to gain the advantage. So
Yeah,
I, Mhm.
use your instincts.
Absolutely. I always viewed Savage as the underdog in the Savage Hogan dynamic, whether he was a babyface or a heel, and that's why I was drawn to the guy.
Yeah, I mean, people still talk to this day about the mega powers and how cool that era was, that rock and wrestling era. Really brought wrestling to the mainstream. And Detroit also has some pretty cool history in wrestling as well. Back with the original Sheik, and
Yeah.
so many of the legends that came through the area in the '60s and '70s. But You know, pro wrestling over the years has evolved and changed so much throughout the years, and you have written so many books on the subject. I want to talk to you about your writing career and what made you decide to pursue a career in journalism.
I think it was more so that I don't think I was particularly, I don't want to say I wasn't good at anything else. I don't think I was interested enough in anything else to become good at it. Um, or to pour time and energy into it. And with respect to, well, okay. So I graduated from Michigan in '01. Graduated from the Specs Howard School of Broadcast Arts in 2002, and graduated from Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism in December of '05, even though they say that I'm technically class of '06 because that's when our group walked at graduation. I wasn't there. I was out in December of '05, and started working for NBC News in Flint, Michigan as an editor and reporter. And got out of that fairly quickly because journalists usually don't make any money, especially when they're starting out. The allure of, or I should say, just the lure of making more money is just too strong. And I started working in state government as one of the press secretaries for the Speaker of the House of the state of Michigan. So I was out of journalism pretty rapidly, but sort of got drawn back into it accidentally. I mean, and along the way, I worked for several different companies. I worked for a fitness startup in Southeast Michigan. That's how I met Kurt Angle and got to be cool with him and met everybody in mixed martial arts because all those guys were using our product, which was great. And then I got back into journalism accidentally. I was working for a company in San Mateo, California called Mavoto Real Estate. And we were attempting to compete. They just gotten funded by a $1 billion company out in Japan. And they were attempting to compete with Redfin and Zillow. And they were attempting to establish supremacy with respect to organic SEO links on on Google. And this is back in 2013, 2014. They were pouring millions into this organic SEO strategy. And along the way, we kind of had a free hand to test different things out. So I was allowed to, using my connections, contact Kurt Angle and say, "Hey, Kurt, we're trying this out. Can I talk to you about the 10 best places to wrestle?" And he said, "Sure." So we did Kurt Angle list the 10 best places to wrestle. And we got this massive number of inbound, you know how many wrestling news sites there are. We got this massive number of inbound sites and links of wrestling news sites linking to this piece. And Mavoto, the managers were like, "Holy smokes, this is fantastic. Like, we need to do this. We need to do more of this." So I think then I interviewed Dwayne Ludwig and we did top 10 places to fight or something like that. But when I left Mavoto, I started freelance writing for a few other places. One was the West Michigan Sports Commission, and they were doing pieces on like 5 lessons about fill in the blank sport you could do. So I interviewed Isaiah Thomas, the original Isaiah Thomas of the Detroit Pistons. I interviewed Kurt Angle for that. I interviewed, and again, you see, I'm using this as an excuse to talk to wrestlers. I interviewed Diamond Dallas Page, best yoga workouts. I interviewed Taz with respect to judo. I got around to interviewing Dan Severn for combat sports. And I only needed 25 minutes of his time. He gave me an almost an hour and a half. I was thinking, man, he's so profusive with his speech in these settings. I'll bet if I could get 15 or so sessions like that out of him, he could probably do a book length project if you could keep him focused. And that didn't happen. I didn't suggest it. I filed it away. And months went by. Dan stayed in touch with me. I think the reason he stayed in touch with me is because my cousin was one of the co-founders of the Dark Horse Brewing Company, which used to have a reality series on history, the History Channel called Dark Horse Nation. It had a very brief run, but they were a very popular independent brewery in Marshall, Michigan, which is a half hour north of Coldwater, Michigan. I mean, it's about as close as you can, as something can get, as something of relevance can get to Coldwater, Michigan, because there's nothing near Coldwater, but Marshall is. And so Dan stayed in touch, and then he just mentioned, "Hey, I'd like to write a book one day." And I said, "Well, it just so happens that I'm willing to do that for you. So if you'll give me an hour to an hour and a half a day per day for the next 2 weeks, I think we can do something." And we did, and that wound up being Dan's book. So that's the very long-winded answer to how I got started in this.
Yeah, yeah, and you're making all these contacts and networking with so many people. You write a plethora of these books. The current one that's out now on Black Pro Wrestling history, I got a chance to read it, and it is incredible.
Well, first of all, thanks for reading it.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing how you're able to go research all these different facts and bits of trivia that a lot of fans, especially current ones, may not know of. And what made you decide to go back and start this project?
Um, that is an excellent question. It's a loaded question, and there are a lot of factors involved, and I'll try to shorthand them. But factor number one is it's an area that I had a general interest in that people were way too comfortable saying. Starting in the mid 1950s, you've got Bobo Brazil, you've got Bearcat Wright Jr., you've got Sweet Daddy Siki, or Reginald Siki 2, as I like to call him, the knockoff. Some people might mention Luther Lindsay, and they're comfortable starting there. And then someone might say, oh, well, there was a Reginald Siki earlier who was the true pioneer, 1920s to 1930s. Then he went off to wrestle in Europe. Like, okay, great. So no one really had an interest in diving deeper until maybe 10 years ago. And then the problem you get into is any new tidbit or morsel or nugget of information that comes out, everybody just sort of goes, "Ooh, like wow, this is incredible, and this is now the new most important kernel of truth to come down the pike since, in the last 20 years." And you have way too many people, and it's performative to some extent, and I've been guilty of it myself. I'm not just pointing the finger outwardly. Um, but you have way too many people or publications, wrestling publications, who would say, All right, it's Black History Month. Let's do a black thing and get that online and get that up, and it'll type up 1,000 words, and our publication will look great for having delved into this. Um, so it's almost like they think they're doing some sort of a public service by putting the thing out for 1 month out of the year, and then they forget about it for the rest of the year. So I was sick of that. I was annoyed at myself for occasionally doing that. And so that brings us to the Pro Wrestling Authors Hall of Fame, which I mean it's simple mathematics. If you're a wrestling author who's contributed 4 books of a certain length and a certain type that match the spirit of what people expect a book to be, you're in the Hall of Fame. Okay, so they come up with the list. There's 30 guys, 27 white, 2 Japanese, and then there's me. As it okay, if I'm the black guy, and then people started saying, okay, Ian, you're the best black wrestling author of all time. Cool, that's an honor. It's great that they're saying that, but are there certain expectations that come with that title, that should come with that title? If I was judging a guy 10 years later who had that title and I looked at his body of work, are there certain things that I would want to see? Were there any responsibilities there? So I said, okay, what would I want if I'm going to be that guy, what do I have to do? Like, okay, I'm going to fill in the entirety of the gap between 1880 and 1950, and I'm going to leave folks without excuse when it comes to making guesses about what happened during that period. And hopefully I can find some black pro wrestling pioneers who didn't get the shine and acclaim they deserved. Certainly not while they were wrestling, but especially now when we're in a laudatory mood with respect to pioneers. So let's finally cast some light in their direction. So that was the motivation.
And I think it's cool that, you're able to bring awareness and educate fans and non-fans about the past and about uh, the origins of pro wrestling through a different viewpoint, from a different perspective, because not many people have taken that chance before to be able to do that. And so to be able to shine a light on it, um, it really is an amazing feat to be able to do that. And so, um, do you plan on making this a series of books? Do you plan on?
No, no, I don't. So that is the okay. So I'm glad you asked that. So first of all, this is not easy. The book took 2 years to make. That is a lot of time devoting, especially now that I have a very young son. I have a toddler. Like that is a lot of time sneaking off to devote my 1 hour of free time a day to researching something or writing something. Because this is not my day job. I have 2 essentially full-time jobs that I do. So yeah, to devote another 2 years to a project like this and a follow-up, like no, but I covered what I was interested in covering here. And if somebody else wants to take it up and decide that, like, now that we have a fully fleshed out backstory of everything that led up to Bobo Brazil, now if somebody wants to do a Bobo Brazil bio, they're 400 plus pages ideally. They can do it with a fully informed and accurate perspective of everything that preceded him so that they're not saying some absolutely wild, outlandish, and untrue stuff while they're doing it. The other thing, I've had other people ask if this was part of a series, or they'll immediately say, "Hey, can how about you do an Ernie Ladd bio or Thunderbolt Patterson or the Junkyard Dog? And I would never allow myself to be pigeonholed in that way. I'm glad I came into this through working on Dan Severn's book, working on Bugsy McGraw's, working on Hornswoggle's, Brian Blair, Steve Kern, doing the Bahamas Pro Wrestling History book in the middle of that. That's my mom's home country. Before getting to the Jack Claiborne, Rufus Jones book, finalizing Mike Rotunda's book. That's done. That can drop any day. I mean, it's not imminent. We have to figure out what we're going to do, but that's a completed project. And then doing this. But I would hate to be ultimately seen as he's the guy who does the black wrestling stuff. Like I want to be a guy who's thought of as doing as covering all wrestling. He just happened to write these two or three, depending on how you view the Bahamas wrestling book. He happened to write these two or three projects that expanded the history and understanding of Black pro wrestling. And then he moved on to something else.
Ah, okay. Yeah, it's always good to have a variety of different topics and cover different aspects of the business. So you have a variety of subjects to cover, but it's a talk to me about like the reception of the book. How have you heard from any of the current stars of the industry
Uh,
with the new release?
Big E posted the book on Twitter and apparently loves it, which was fantastic to see. I've gotten more feedback and excitement from and okay, I expected it from wrestling historians and I got it, which is awesome to see. Where they're hitting me up and saying this is so valuable, this is incredible. They're praising me for not taking the easy way out. And the easy way out would have been, I mean, exactly what I initially did, which you have to do if you're going to do something like that, which is 15,000 word summary on Jack Claiborne's wrestling career, 15,000 word summary on Celie Samara's career, 5,000 word summary on Lee Umble's career, uh, 3,500 word summary on Alex Kaffner's career, 20,000 words on Reginald Siki. And the easy way out is I present this as profiles of Black pro wrestling pioneers. So we'll start with Siki, and then we'll jump to this guy, and then we'll jump to this guy. And I have to treat each one of these like it's like you've never heard, every time I introduce a new wrestler, you've never heard of them before. Um, and I thought that was taking the easy way out. I thought the way to improve reader comprehension of the subject matter was to blend it all together so that you understand that in 1947, when Reginald Siki is finally getting an opportunity with a championship belt out in California, that you have Don Kindred and Don Blackman, who are wrestling for the first time with competent black versus black wrestling south of the Mason-Dixon line in Virginia. And then you're getting the follow-up of Don Blackman versus Buddy Jackson. And then you're getting Don Blackman taking his entire troupe down there of him, Buddy Jackson, and Alex Kaffner he brought with him, and also Frank James. Um, and also you can trace where uh, Tiger Flowers becomes Rufus Jones. Rufus Jones becomes the super headbutting machine. And then in 1946, Jim Mitchell, who was the technician of the Black Wrestling Pioneers in that group, he starts headbutting out in Boston in 46 and then takes it to California in late 46 into 47. And then Jack Claiborne, the best natural athlete of the group and the acrobatic drop kicking machine, he starts headbutting two alongside his drop kicks during his record-breaking title reign in Hawaii. It wasn't a record-breaking title reign for Hawaii, but it was the longest reign by an identifiably black pro wrestler of the era by far, of almost a full year. And then he wrestles Sealy Samara during that period, and then Sealy Samara leaves Hawaii and heads out to the Northeast and into Canada, and he becomes the headbutting machine. And over the course of over the course of 3 years, all of the stars in that quartet of the era, Rufus Jones, Jim Mitchell, Sealy Samar, and Jack Claiborne, they're all headbutting machines, and it cements the stereotype of the black pro wrestler as the guy with the thick skull. And then that mantle is taken up most popularly and famously by Bobo Brazil with the Cocoa Butt in the 1950s. So you got to do that chronologically so that people can easily trace it, or otherwise people will become confused within your own book.
Yeah, I mean, you're telling the story of the evolution of uh, African American history with pro wrestling. It is fascinating. It's an amazing it's really an amazing story that you're telling. I want to switch gears
Mhm.
and on another note and talk about some of the stuff you've done outside of the pro wrestling industry and writing. I know you've been involved with a lot of charity groups and have done stuff in your community. Talk to me about some of the stuff you've helped out with over the years.
The primary thing that I've helped out with, and I don't know if this is typical or atypical of the people you have on your program, but the primary thing I've done was the years I served as a volunteer firefighter here in Durham County. I was a guy who always worked out. Oliver Bateman. I don't know if you know Oliver Bateman. In my opinion, he's the best writer in the world, period. He happens to write about pro wrestling along with an assortment of other topics that he's just a master in. And he's the guy who pulled me into the Ringer as one of the Ringer's wrestling writers. He's the reason I got my he's the reason I got my name on the byline of the Ringer's Hulk Hogan obituary. I owe so much to that guy. It's crazy. Like alongside Kenny Casanova, like those are the two guys I know the most to as far as helping me advance as a wrestling writer. But Oliver is like me. Well, okay. I need to be careful comparing myself to him because Oliver can deadlift probably 700 pounds or more right now, as we sit here. He's just a monster of a human being. But he and I are kindred spirits in as much as we couldn't watch all of the fit guys in pro wrestling and not be inspired to work out incessantly ourselves. So I was a guy who always worked out at least 4 days a week for the most part, barring injury. Uh, every day of my life from the time well, I don't want to count when I was in swim practice as a 7-year-old, but from the time I got to high school, so let's say age 13, 14, um, 4 days a week, 4 to 5 days a week on average, straight up until the present day, except not right now because I just had shoulder replacement surgery. So even in this, there's a cautionary tale. Your joints are going to wear down if you work out long enough and hard enough. But in the midst of that, I was still competing as a swimmer. And once I stopped swimming, it just occurred to me, I'm not going to be in above average or even average physical shape forever. And working out for the sake of your health, that's cool. Working out just so that you can look appealing. Great. I've certainly done it. Working out so that you can be great at your sport of choice, like swimming in my case. Yes, absolutely. But then there was this idea of, okay, I'm if I'm only strong for a certain period of my life, I should probably devote some of that to the service of others. Like I should at least try to. Um, if God has blessed me in this way, like not that God blessed me with incredible genetics, but if He blessed me with the time and the drive to get myself in shape, did I actually use it in the service of others, or was I just using it in the service of myself? And so I thought it would be a good idea to try to devote myself physically to my community by becoming a volunteer firefighter. And so I started training, ironically, with the Bahama, Bahama. Everyone pronounces it Bahama. I certainly did too. So the half Bahamian winds up on the Bahama volunteer fire, working for the Bahama Volunteer Fire Department. But yeah, I became a volunteer firefighter.
That is so cool. Getting the chance to serve and protect others from harm, from danger. Tell me about was there like a time or a moment that meant so much to you as far as going out and saving a life?
I didn't have, okay, so Durham County versus Durham City. Durham City is where you get like the hardcore professional full-timers. Durham County is way more rural. You're more out in farm territory. And there you would get a lot of brush fires. And so the most I don't know because I never felt like I was in danger. But when the instance where there was actually a blaze going, and you're like, oh wow, that's a serious fire. Like it was a brush fire where you're out in the brush truck and you're spraying foam and you're just trying to control it so that it burns itself out. Um, and we got there early enough, so we weren't really worried about any serious damage happening to the residents, which was about 60, 70 yards away from the fire. Um, we got it under control. So I don't have any stories about saving lives, but as far as feeling, I can say as far as feeling the appreciation of the community, like there were several instances where people they're coming by with their kids and they're dropping food off and other things off at the firehouse and they're saying like thank you for everything you do, and I'm saying like hey, I'm not the skilled guy here. I'm just a volunteer. I'm not a big deal. It's these other guys, but they're still, you know, they appreciate you and they're thankful that you, especially as a volunteer, that you're not getting paid for it, but you devoted your time and you're spending nights away from your family, just in case something happens, that you're the guy who's going to respond to it. And that's very touching to see that they have that level of appreciation. And frankly, I never felt like I was worthy of it because I was just a guy who was there helping out.
Well, you were making a difference, in a time where it was very stressful and people need someone in their life to help them get through that, and you were there for them.
Well, look, again, the volunteers in in the volunteer fire department, they tend to try to minimize our exposure to certain things. So I never felt like I never felt like I was at any serious risk of injury. But again, I'm also not the guy sitting on the sidelines hoping that someone else responds to the dangerous thing. Um, one of the reasons I did it was because I I also wanted to condition myself to be the guy where if something if something bad happens, I'm not running in the opposite direction, hoping that someone else shows up to take care of it. I'm going out and doing something about it. Here, I'll tell you a really quick story, because this is recent. A week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I was out walking the dog at 6:30 in the morning, getting ready to head off to my physical therapy appointment. Even now, I can't even raise my left arm past. I mean, you see me on the screen. I can't raise it to parallel to the ground. It was even worse then. But there was a lady in our subdivision who was walking around with her child, saying that that her other 3-year-old was missing, probably autistic. She didn't know where he was, and she said, well, she asked me if I'd seen him. I said no, and she said, well, if you see him, can you let me know? And I said, yeah, of course. Now, a few years ago, in that moment, I would have said, okay, if it's convenient for me, if I happen to spot him, I'll say something, but I won't actively do anything about it. I put the dog in the house. I went right back out. I saw the direction she was heading in. I decided to turn toward the lake and the new construction site because I figured that would be the most dangerous place for this kid to possibly go in our subdivision. I walk a block down, I make a right, I see this little 3-year-old in socks walking across the street from where the lake is into the active construction zone with all the hazards. So I head over there, and so I'm standing right next to him, and this is where it got weird for me internally because this kid doesn't know me. And I was raised with stranger danger in mind. So I'm like, okay, don't be a weird creep to kids. Um, and I'm standing right next to him saying, "Hey, your mom's looking for you. Do you want to come with me, buddy?" And he's saying, and like he's barely looking at me. And then finally, I knelt down and I just reached my one good arm out and I said, "Hey, buddy, if you come here and give me a hug, I can carry you to your mom." And he walked right into my arms, and I picked him up and I carried him over to his mom. And I like carried him at that point, it's probably almost a quarter of a mile over to his mom from where I was with my one good arm. And she was very appreciative, of course, but I was wrestling with that one afterwards as a dad because, first of all, if my toddler went missing, I'd be a wreck, number one. Number two, I was there to lure this kid in for the sake of his safety. It would have been just as easy for someone who didn't have the best of intentions to say, "Hey, come here, buddy, give me a hug," and kidnap him and he's never seen again. So sorry to tell you the long-winded story, but all of that is to say I think the acts of service as a volunteer firefighter help to condition my mind to try to be an active force for good.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's trusting your instincts, knowing, if you see something, you got to act on it and make sure that they're protected, and try to get them where they need to be. You were able to save a life, get the child where he needed to go. Um, what is it about giving back to the community that gives you the most joy?
Just feeling like you've actually done something selfless. Like it's so easy to take an insular approach to life and wall yourself off and engage in just wholly self-interested behavior. And you can you can hide your gifts, you can hide your gifts from the world. I shouldn't use the term gifts because it sounds like I'm being way too self-aggrandizing here. But I think everybody has an ability to serve others and serve their community in at least some form or fashion. And if you wall yourself off from the community, you're doing all of those people a disservice, and you're also doing yourself a disservice because nothing I've done in, when I'm ranking the importance of the things I did in the last month that I know were of meaning, of lasting meaning to people, there's nothing that can compete with the fact that I made the decision to go back out there and look for that young man. So yeah, it's the feeling of knowing for certain that your actions made a difference when it comes to improving people's lives. And I mean, this is going to sound like a selfish plug for the new book. It's not intended to be, but the most rewarding thing to come from the new book, I love the fact that Greg Oliver, Keith Elliott Greenberg, um, Steven Johnson, Tim Hornbaker, that all of these guys reached out to me independently and said they appreciated what I was doing with the new book and they saw the value in it. That's great. But when Clarence Bolden's family members reached out to me, I didn't know he had any living family members. And they told me that they thought the book was an absolute treasure. And one of his grandchildren is still alive. She's 99 years old. And that this was going to be the highlight of her entire year, that they were going to get to read chapters of the book to her, that that venerated her father, who never received that level of acclaim or appreciation in his lifetime. Uh, that means a lot to me. I don't make these books to make money because indie wrestling books, generally speaking, don't make a lot of money. But the fact that you're able to doing things, whether it's through writing, whether it's through hands-on experiences that are of lasting value to people's lives, to me, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, when you get those messages, they're touching, you know, they mean so much because you never expected it.
Yeah.
And you're setting an example for generations to come with, you know, the next book that comes out in terms of, you know, talking about, you know, black wrestling history or any kind of wrestling history out there. So, kudos to you for putting out such a unique project that is really resonating with so many people.
Well, thank you. There's a way to my buddy Emio Tomioni, who in my opinion is the best sports YouTuber there is. He's also the reason I have a Webby Award. He runs the NBA
Congratulations.
Storyteller YouTube channel. Don't congratulate me, congratulate him. I was just there, but I got a trophy in the mail, so that was cool. But Emio told me in the creation process that there's a way to write about anything that makes it disposable, but there's also a way to write about anything that makes it evergreen and it makes it lasting. I want this to be something that could be used as a reference guide 40 years from now, and it's still fresh and it doesn't become a work that was a prisoner of the moment.
You know, you're creating something and you're educating fans and you're paying it forward to generations that are going to grow up uh, interested in wanting to know more. Ian, I want to say thank you so much for coming on to Wrestling with Heart. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and viewers that are watching this on YouTube. Where can people find out more about you and about the new book and how you can get a copy?
Man, I'm gonna have to plug my socials, and I usually like to stay anonymous with my pitifully low count of followers. But you could go on Twitter, or X now, sorry. It's at Streamglass, STREAMGLASS on Twitter. On Instagram, I'm Ian Mac Douglas, IANMACDOUGLASS. And also at iandouglas.net is the website whenever I get around to updating it.
All right. Thanks so much again, Ian, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Uh, Thank you so much, Stanley. It was a privilege, and thank you for letting me bore you for the past hour or so.
No, it's fine. We'll do a part two. Let me know when you get another book out. We'll talk about it.
You got it, man.
All right, take care.
You too.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.